This video introduces my study entitled The Shift from Alway to Always in the History of English. Traditionally, always has been described as genitive in origin, whereas alway represents the accusative form. As for earlier English, scholars have suggested a semantic difference between alway, meaning all the time, and always, meaning at every time. In practice, however, this distinction is often unclear, and in many contexts, the two forms were interchangeable. In present-day English, alway is marginal and largely restricted to poetic and archaic styles. The central aim of this paper is to investigate how and when alway was replaced by always in the history of English, with special attention to the period from late Middle English to early Modern English. I will also approach this topic as a test case to examine the usability of MEPS, the early Modern English prose selections, a corpus I have compiled from Early English Books Online. The main data come from MEPS version 1, which consists of early modern English prose texts from 1500 to 1700. For this study, I focus on the A texts divided into 4 50-year periods. To supplement MEPS, I have also used other sources. A corpus of English dialogues 1560 to 1760, representing various types of speech-related writing, the early modern English sections of the Helsinki corpus, and the passed-on letters, which will offer a late Middle English background. First of all, the passed-on letters in the 15th century. In the subset of family members considered, I found 30 relevant examples, 22 instances of alway, and 8 of always. There is a clear generational pattern. The older family members use only alway, whereas younger members, such as John Paston II, John Paston III, and Clement Paston, begin to use always alongside the older form. This suggests that the shift from alway to always was already in progress in the 15th century. Turning to MEPS, we see a clear shift. In the first period, alway and always coexist, with always only slightly more frequent. However, in 1551 to 1600, the picture changes dramatically. Always now accounts for well over 90% of all examples. These figures show that the 16th century is the crucial turning point in the shift from alway to always. Furthermore, in the first half of the 16th century, many texts still use alway, and some texts use both alway and always. In the second half of the century, more than 3/4 of the texts already provide only always, but there are still a few texts that use the older form or mix both forms. By the 17th century, most texts are fully modern, giving always only. In a corpus of English dialogues, the earliest period, that is 1560 to 1599, contains 42 relevant examples, and all of them are always. This suggests that spoken or speech-like English may have shifted to always quite rapidly. The Helsinki corpus provides an interesting contrast in early modern English period 1, that is from 1500 to 1570. Law texts still favor alway, while trial texts based on courtroom speech already prefer always. Taken together, these findings support the idea that the shift was a change from below. It advanced earlier in more informal speech-based registers. In conclusion, This study has shown that the shift from Alway to Always begins in late Middle English, undergoes its major change in the 16th century, and is largely complete in most written genres by the 17th century. From a sociolinguistic perspective, it is a change from below, initiated in relatively informal or spoken usage. Finally, I argue that EMEPS, despite not being fully balanced, is a reliable and useful resource for investigating historical change, especially when combined with other corpora. Thank you very much for your attention.